Hello, folks, and welcome back to Chris Wine Africa. Today's topic is about the loss of language. Thousands of languages around the world have gone extinct or are on the verge of going extinct as we speak today. This tragedy is one for humankind that cannot be calculated in ways that we can balance a business sheet or count those who are born or those who pass away. The loss of language is a true and grievous loss for humankind. As a polyglot who speaks 6 languages to some degree of proficiency, I've always found language to be an interesting way to understand other people, to learn about them, to learn about culture and understand the world better. People think differently. Languages are formed differently. I discovered this when the second language I learned was German. It was my first foreign language. And Germans think very differently than we do when they form their thoughts just from the way their language is constructed. It's the same the world over. In Africa, with over 2,000 languages, we see a number of languages currently in jeopardy of disappearing forever. And this is the story of Nu. And I don't even begin to pretend to be able to pronounce that correctly. It's the San language of the Bushmen of South Africa. And it's on the verge of disappearing. Just under a decade ago, a video was made when there were 23 speakers of the language left. A language that had never been written down in recorded history until the past decade, when the last of its speakers began working with linguists to help compile the language, which has unique clicks and is different than other San languages in South Africa. It's considered to be the oldest of the San languages or Bushman languages found in Southern Africa, or certainly in South Africa. From 23 speakers down to 7 by 2013, down to 3 just a couple years ago, and now just one lone voice is left. And that is the voice of Katrina Esau, who is 88 years of age and is trying desperately to pass on her heritage of her language to those in South Africa who will listen. 88-year-old Katrina Esau, known as Uma, of course, as grandmother in Afrikaans, is doing everything she can to preserve her childhood language. She's the last known fluent speaker in the language. And if the language is gone, much will be lost. Simon Sauls, her younger brother, passed away, making her the last remaining speaker of the language. There's no other fluent speakers in the world outside of Katrina Esau. It's been labeled critically endangered by the United Nations. I should think so, if the only speaker of the language is an 88-year-old grandmother. As I said, thousands of languages around the globe are in danger of disappearing. Some languages on the verge of disappearing forever have been resurrected and saved, but only a handful. Welsh would be one of these. Welsh is a language that was on the verge of disappearing just 4 or 5 decades ago, but a concerted effort to save the culture saved the language, and Welsh is thriving today in many respects in Wales. But other languages aren't so fortunate. I don't believe anyone speaks Manx anymore. It is an extinct language to my knowledge. And the number of languages around the world that disappear is disturbing. Now, there are a lot of reasons for it. The colonization of the world by different groups the world over. In Latin America, the proliferation of Spanish and Portuguese. In North America, the proliferation of English. In Africa, the proliferation of English and French, Portuguese, even Spanish in one location. And in some respects, even Afrikaans in Southern Africa have had impact. These languages being the languages of commerce, of trade, of government, pushes and crowds out indigenous languages. The indigenous languages that are especially vulnerable are those that aren't written down and recorded. Because if people want to learn a language before the age of video and audio, there was no way to learn language unless it was written down. But even with audio and video, one needs a written language. You must have an alphabet. And Nu has an alphabet now. But it's truly, truly sad to see a language on the verge of disappearing. And this is a story that has been covered for probably 15 years in South Africa and by the United Nations and media covering the decline of this language down to just one speaker left. Katrina Esau grew up in the township of Rosedale in Uppington in South Africa. She's a chief in her community, and for more than a decade, she's been working to preserve her native culture and language, teaching Nu to children in the community, a language that has 112 sounds and 45 unique clicks. But most people in the community speak Afrikaans, which has been there since the 17th century. And she recalls growing up on a white-owned farm near the Kalahari, where her employer forbade her from speaking her first language. Many South Africans experience this. It's unfortunate, a language that survived over 300 years with colonization and now is on the verge of extinction. Many people actually thought that Nuul was extinct. Back in the 1990s, people thought the language had gone out of use entirely. But as the country transitioned to majority rule, LC Valboy, a new speaker, made a public radio call for other speakers of the language to come forward. And about 20 people from the Northern Cape came forward who could speak the language. Many of them probably related and not realizing it. But over the years, the numbers have dwindled, and the click-laden language of the San culture has almost become a thing of the past, with just one person left. Now, she runs a school that has students aged 3 to 19, helping learn the basics like greetings, animal names, body parts, and short sentences. But she never learned to read or write on her own, and she uses songs, images, and plays to teach the language. But at her age, she says she's working overtime to do all she can do. I'm teaching language because I don't want it to become extinct when I die. I want to pass on as much as I can, but I'm very aware that we don't have a lot of time. Sorry. As I said before, she worked with folks. There was no written language for Nuul. It had just been passed down orally, as languages had been since time immemorial amongst Homo sapiens. But with the help of Sheena Shah from the School of Oriental and African Studies in London and Matthias Breitzinger of the Center for African Language Diversity in Cape Town, she was able to create a new alphabet and a guide for basic grammar rules that she can use to help teach. She's also released a children's book this past May. So she became an author at nearly 90 years of age. Tortoise and Ostrich is the first ever book written in the new language. In addition to that, she's been recording audio and video of herself to make sure the language is heard in the future. It's one of many languages endangered extinction in South Africa and across the continent, and for that matter, across the world, particularly in the Amazon. Communities in South Africa looking to reignite languages like the Nama language, which is spoken in South Africa, but it's dying in South Africa, although it's spoken in nearby Namibia. The Khoi San language, it's a Khoi San language of nearly 250,000 people in Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa. One can hope that the language survives her passing when she leaves this earth, and we keep this unique patronage of humankind. Hopefully the language will survive once she's left this earth, and others will be able to enjoy it and learn from the unique way that this language is constructed. Although doubtless, because first language speakers will no longer exist and others will learn as a second language, it will change. No doubt it will change. Folks, thanks a lot for your time, your patience here on Chris White Africa. We appreciate your support. And if you can, find out what you can about the language of Nuul, and maybe it's something for you. Cheers, everyone.